Saturday night in the deep sounds. They bang hip-hop, gridlocked in Greektown. The beat cops looking for somebody to beat down. They got no control, who's running the streets now? They shutting all the schools and the factories been closed. Only thing open is the busted out windows. Whole blocks looking like they got bombed and missed.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Welcome to the qWARRENtine, the first episode. My name's Warren Peace. I'll be your host on this adventure. Today's Tuesday, April 7th. We are in the middle of a global pandemic. We are stuck in the house. And so I've been wanting to start a podcast of some sort for a long time. And I thought this was a great opportunity because there's not much else to do. And I've got some time on my hands. So I recorded the first interview, which I'll talk about in a minute, on Sunday, 2 nights ago, April 5th. And just wanted to give you some background about me since this is the first episode. I'm presuming most people watching this probably know me, but if you're a person from the future after this show has become wildly successful and you're going back to the beginning, maybe this will fill in some gaps for you. So, quick biography of me. I am a almost 40-year-old person living in the suburbs of Detroit, Michigan, where I've lived most of my life, except for a few years. I'm a Spanish teacher. I learned Spanish because I lived in Honduras for a year, and I went there to teach and to learn better Spanish because at the time I had been living in California. That's where I got certified to teach originally. I lived there for a couple years after college to go and be with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. We have 2 children, and we ended up back here in our home area of Metro Detroit. But I teach Spanish. I also worked for a nonprofit for a number of years that builds schools in developing countries, so I had the opportunity to travel to other parts of the world, places like Mali and West Africa and Nicaragua and Central America. So I consider myself to be an activist, particularly through my work. I'm involved in multiple diversity committees at my school where I teach, at the district level as well as at the county level. And also for about the past decade, I've been a regularly performing musician, kind of stepping back from that a little bit, although I'm still recording. I'm a hip-hop artist. And I've had the idea of doing a podcast of some sort for a long time and just kind of dragged my feet because I did not know what format to do or how exactly I would make it work. And what's been great about one of the positives, I guess, to come out of this pandemic is watching even professional TV hosts and things like that just doing stuff from webcams in their house, like the Tonight Show and stuff like that. So I was just kind of like, this is a great opportunity. People have time. I can chat with them. We can record it and we can post it up. So that's how it got started. And I'm gonna be hoping to do a couple a week and then post them a few days later. So the first person I talked to was my best friend, Eric Singer, and I'll be talking about him in just a minute. But first, this is where an ad would go if there was a sponsor for this show. And I'm hoping to find some sponsors. I would really love it if a local business or several local businesses would kick in a little bit of money to sponsor the show. Not so that I could get paid, because this is a pretty low-tech thing and I'm figuring out how to edit it all myself and all that, and using very little in the way of equipment. But I would love to be able to pay the people who come on the show. A lot of them are going to be artists, musicians, gig workers, people who are laid off. So I would really love to give people some money for their time. And that would be also a way where I could highlight a local business and hopefully drive some virtual traffic to them. So if you have a business or you know someone who does, put them in touch with me. You can reach me at mcwarrenpeace@gmail.com, and that will be also on the show notes in whatever this is posted on, as well as in the credits at the end of the show. So this is where your ad would go, right here, and I would read whatever copy you would like me to read. So also stay tuned. Tonight I'm going to be doing my second interview with my friend Mar Brisa, who is a singer, songwriter, musician, talented guitar player. She just released a music video yesterday, and we're going to talk about her music and many other things. So I'm looking forward to that. That should be coming out in a few days. But this interview that you're about to watch is from this past Sunday, April 5th. I talked to my best friend, Eric Singer. We've been friends since I was a sophomore and he was a freshman in high school. And Eric lives in Chicago. We did not go to the same high school. We met through a Jewish youth group. And we've been friends ever since. We were the best man in each other's weddings. He has a son who is turning a year old very soon. And we talked about all kinds of things. Eric is a strategic account manager at PCTEL. I think that's right. I jacked that off of LinkedIn, but I'm not sure if that's updated. I know he works for PCTEL, which is a telecommunications company, and so he's very knowledgeable about how that technology works. So we got into conversation about the controversy around 5G and all those types of things, that the conspiracy theories that are out there about that. We also talked about his wife's advocacy for his wife Jody, who's advocating for mental health services to be covered by insurance in Illinois during this pandemic, when people have to do it virtually. There's been some issues with insurance, and she's been in the news, and so we talked about that some, and then we just talked about what our hopes are for positive change that might come out of this. So it's really just two friends talking and catching up, and I hope you'll enjoy it. So without further ado, here's Eric Singer. All right, Eric Singer, welcome to the first episode of the Quarantine, assuming that this is the first one that posts. How's it going?
Pretty good. I'm happy and honored to be the first guest.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'm glad to be talking to you. So how are your people doing? How's everybody doing in your family and your circles of influence? How are people doing?
Well, I'd say people are doing pretty well, but there is definitely some COVID around some family and friends.
Mm-hmm.
Jody's uncle got it. Actually, he was interviewed for NPR.
Jody, your wife?
Yes, Jody, my wife. I apologize here.
Most of the people watching this probably know both of us, but you know.
Yes. Yeah, so he actually got the give you pneumonia variety of the virus, but not the need to go to the hospital on a ventilator version. So he dropped about 20 pounds. His wife dropped 10. She had it much more mildly, but still they just were shedding weight like crazy. And they had a real bear of a time getting tested. I always worked from home, so at least my daily isn't too disrupted.
But you traveled a lot.
I did travel a lot, and that for sure came to a halt. And
were you worried when all this came into effect that you been traveling a lot right before that?
I had, and because I'd been traveling a lot before that, and my territory is off in Canada. Every time I crossed the border, I got I'd say since I think January 6th was the first time I crossed the border, and ever since that time I've been getting the third degree about whether I'd been to Wuhan in the last 14 days. So right. I'd say that the U.S. government knew what was going on, and any nonsense that people are trying to say. Certainly the severity wasn't there. I mean, I got to be careful, but not exactly what that meant
Mm-hmm.
in the realm of what we're doing now.
Right.
Um, all the way up until about the 14th of March.
Okay.
Uh, I even did go out a little bit and was very careful, but was out amongst people, certainly inside of 6 feet for St. Patrick's Day here in Chicago. And then that very next day, it was evident like, you can't do this stuff. And I said, oh, that was probably not my smartest move.
Yeah.
And barely left the house after that. I went on a shopping run. Um, Very weird when you go shopping. It's
Yeah.
like everyone's your mortal enemy, and you're trying to stay 6 feet away, but you still want to be nice to them.
Right.
That's sort of in my nature, anyway. To chit chat with people, but I'm like sitting there using my cart to like block people,
Yeah.
sort of passively block them, but from getting within my sphere. I had way too much, but asked if I could use the self checkout anyway, and they were like, "Yeah, for sure."
Yeah. I
So I did that. And then after that point, I didn't leave the house for 2 solid weeks, which was Wednesday.
right.
And here I am. So that was pretty good until Thursday. We have a nanny that comes and watches my almost 1 year old son. And she said, well, I got a little bit of a cough and I don't have a fever, but I do have a headache. Do you want me to come? And we're like, no. So I am 2-week quarantined as of Tuesday, which was the last day she came.
Oh wow.
And now my wife, who's a psychologist working at home, you can't really move sessions around. There's a whole lot more about what she's dealing with insurance companies.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
ask you about that in a little bit.
yeah, I'll get to that in a
Oh.
little bit. It's just this next week is going to be my work is going to be what suffers.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care, honestly, because I'm in sales and there's only so much going on anyway.
Right.
With people buying. We are an essential business because we're telecom. But there have been pay cuts and merit raise freezes and everything at my work. And I'll still do my job, but I'm not feeling like I'm beholden to, if I have to take an hour or two off to watch my son, I don't feel bad about that in the least.
Yeah. I
I have a
I
job.
I think for me it hit a little bit earlier um because I'm a teacher, and so it was like the week before St. Patrick's Day where it started being like, oh, this sounds like it might be a problem. And we had the first cases in Oakland County, or in Michigan, but both of them were in Oakland County. And so it was starting to become apparent that we were gonna not have school for a bit. And now that's our governor has canceled school for the rest of the year. So it's kind of I think a lot of teachers, depending on the state they're in, were kind of like ahead of the general public as far as kind of knowing about this because because we work with so many people in such a small enclosed environment that it started being like this public health problem might, and schools were closing on the West Coast, and so it started, what you started hearing about that. And so yeah, it was kind of like just a matter of time. So and you're in a big city, so is that I'm imagining, I mean, I'm in an urban environment, but I'm not in a densely populated urban environment. So is there any, like, how busy are the stores and places when you have to go out?
Yeah. So when I last went to the store, like I said, was probably March 18th. And it was crazy busy.
Yeah.
But everything else was not at all busy. So
Right.
the streets, the one of the busiest freeways I've ever encountered in my life is essentially in my neighborhood. There's a bridge. I don't have to hit a main road. I can take a side street and walk over the Kennedy.
Mhm.
And it was like dead
Wow.
on the Kennedy, which was very saddening to me because I'd love to drive on an empty Kennedy, but I wasn't going to do it this time.
Yeah.
Um, it's it was a little eerie, it was a little weird, and we've gone for a couple walks outside. Um, everyone is everyone knows the deal here. I mean, this is Pritzker was on top of it pretty well, just like Whitmer was um, for Michigan. Pritzker even a couple days earlier than Whitmer as far as shutting the whole deal down. Um, but people just sort of are very weary. They know what's going on in the news. I do have some next door neighbors that are little sort of old timey, almost Chicago accenty sort of people. And they're like, I think the media is more, like it was, and they're
Yeah.
like, they couldn't impeach him the first time. I was like, you don't want to get into this with me. It's, I think you're well aware that I'm a Democrat here, so
Yeah.
or liberal, one way or the other.
Right. So, other than that, like, how do you feel like your life's been impacted? Because you're kind of a rare person who already works from home. So besides travel, you're not really impacted in that way. But obviously, uh, your wife has a job working with the public, um, and so how is your like I guess what I'm getting at is like how do you manage life right now when this is going on?
Yeah, it's strange because my job is the same, except that my factory where we build stuff is here in Illinois, and that's closing down. And the other factory that we have is in Tianjin, China, which I've been worried all Q1 about not being able to get stuff out of China. And
Hmm.
now it's the only place I can get stuff out of. So that everything I deal with my customers is different. I told you there's some salary difference that's going on.
Yeah.
That's sort of a big deal. Um, and my wife is now here with, uh, and one of us has to be watching the baby, but she is a psychologist. So she's doing the full sessions and absolutely can't be interrupted.
Right.
Um, so just Thursday was the first day where we had both our work days and no nanny.
Hmm.
We were able to manage that pretty well. I think Tuesday is going to be particularly challenging. She doesn't really have a break.
Yeah.
Um, he's also an owner of a private practice with her co-owner just had a baby in the middle of this whole thing.
Wow.
Like has like a 2-week-old baby. Um, and they have to apply for small business loans, and they have to figure out what they're going to do for sick leave and what they were going to do with insurance payments, which were very difficult to figure out as in-person visits moved to telehealth. Um,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
pretty well worked out here in Illinois, but she was on the news. I know you wanted me to get into it, so
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
going to.
Yeah. I was gonna say, so your wife's Jody's been very much on the front lines of the battle with the insurance companies in Illinois about having this kind of remote sessions covered. I know I've taken advantage. I mean, I don't think there was any problem or any red tape in Michigan. My therapist just immediately went to telehealth, and we didn't skip a beat. Um, Other than like her dogs are around and stuff
Yeah.
when we're doing the session. But yeah, I'm wondering, where that's at right now, and maybe you could talk a little bit about what she's been doing and where that's at right now.
Sure. And I can even probably speak to, some of what your own therapist is going through. Um, Psychologists are people that went to school for forever so that they can help people. So whether she is getting paid by the insurance company or not, she's probably just seeing you anyway and trying to figure out the billing as it goes.
Yeah.
I sort of always had a little bit more faith that I knew the insurance companies were going to drag their feet, because if they can not pay money, they're going to not pay money. But that it's just such a public relations nightmare at this point to not be paying for things that you would be paying for anyway. If people went into these sessions, they'd pay the same amount. So I sort of figured it would work out. But my wife went on the news to actually discuss with them about how, they're dragging their feet. And then, someone like Blue Cross is such a big entity that they even handle billing for what's called a privately funded insurance policy. So XYZ employer pays for all of your billings and everything, but BCBS handles that. And you have a number on BCBS. It just depends on what code is on your card. You would never know that your company has a privately funded one. And they found it difficult to mandate those people pay for these things. And there's still a couple of holdovers, but eventually they did. All that was helped in Illinois by Pritzker, our governor, putting out an executive order saying that it had to be so, but it didn't really hold a lot of weight, this executive order. It's just, again, it would have been such a public relations nightmare, especially after this whole thing ended, for all these people to have these huge bills, whole private practices just going out of business. And even now they're not getting paid
right
for those claims yet. They're saying that they can't process them for 30 to 45 days. Well, I mean, Jody and her partner still have to pay their employees,
right?
But they can't really do that till they get the money from BCBS. And Brittany, her co-owner, is actually doing sessions literally with a newborn baby sleeping. Like you were talking about the dogs, she's holding a baby during these sessions. It's crazy.
So how did, has Jody ever worked in that type of advocacy role before? And how did she just, because it's affecting a lot of people, how did she get in touch with the media and get that story to be covered like that?
It just ended up being a network thing. No, she hadn't really done this sort of advocacy work. I mean, I think if you're a psychologist, you got to do fellowships and things that are pretty much advocacy work. I mean, she worked at a shelter for homeless, battered women, before she finished her doctorate, and then she worked at community mental health until she opened this practice. It was Illinois Masonic behavioral health, but they took Medicaid, and it was considered part of community mental health. So she'd been doing advocacy, but not getting her face out there and knowing media. It ended up that we asked we're friends with a reporter for Channel 7 News here. He said, I'm just getting swamped right now with all sorts of stuff, and this really isn't my thing. I'm not sure that I can help you in a timely fashion. And then we have another friend that used to work at CBS here, and he sent a letter, and immediately, the reporter that does do this sort of work, he knew who that was, and she contacted Jody right away. She was on the news, and in fact, there's a follow-up story at 6 a.m. tomorrow, Chicago time.
Wow.
So I'll send you that link after.
I'll put it in however this gets posted. I'll put it in the show notes or whatever they call it.
Oh yeah, perfect. Perfect.
And
you're our media outlet now.
Is there anything that people in Illinois who may see this or hear this can do to make sure that stuff is covered, or is it just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen?
Yeah, so it is now. It's all covered, and the issue with lag is some employers are saying, okay, but you've got to pay your full medical deductible first,
Wow.
which is that's garbage. Mental health is never part of the
Right.
medical
Just
deductible.
copay usually, right?
Right. So now it's the full copay plus, the whole session is basically out of pocket until you meet that deductible.
Mm.
Which I'd say in normal circumstances wouldn't be the worst
Right. But
way
right
to
now
do it,
nobody's
right?
making any money.
So bad. Yeah, everyone needs their money now.
Right.
So it's very difficult.
Well, and the
Um,
people who are trying to get the services might not have any money coming in, or maybe, you know, a situation like me where I'm a teacher and I'm still getting a salary, but my wife, who's an acupuncturist, went from making a pretty good salary to making nothing in an instant, and she can't really do the telehealth thing in the way that a therapist can, you know, and she's figuring stuff out, you know, to do. But so
yeah, I saw
if
her
we
actually.
like if I was in a situation like that, um, where I had to pay out of pocket, I'd probably just stop doing it until, you know, until I met my deductible and with other things that I absolutely had to do. So it affects people at a time when they're more vulnerable than ever. You know, people are isolated and people are uh, anxious about their health and their economic prospects. So it's definitely a time where mental health services are. I mean, I'm someone who thinks everybody should be uh, getting therapy, but obviously the people who really, really need it should be able to access it without any problem. So I'm glad she's doing that work, and hopefully they stop dragging their feet.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about something. Wait, did
Yeah,
you?
let me just really quick
Yeah,
close
go
this
ahead.
out. So I was very bad answering the question, which is sort of a symptom of my own mental problems, right? But I'd say people just need to inquire, through their system. Some people have online systems, some people have to ask their HR people if telehealth is covered, and not just for mental health, but also for doctor's appointments, all that.
Right.
Um, and then they can find out what's going on, and once they know, then they can complain.
Sure. Now, has Jody seen the last question about this? Has Jody seen? Because I was talking to my therapist about it, like at the end of one of our sessions, and she was saying, you know, they're not really like not everybody's down to do it for different reasons, and she was kind of explaining to me like some people their home situation might not be safe for them to have candid conversations that other people might be able to hear, or they
Especially
might
now. Yeah.
have some privacy concerns just because it's a video thing, you know, and so who knows if somebody's recording it or somebody's hacking into the conversation or something.
And HIPAA compliance too. I mean, not all of these, what we're on is not necessarily HIPAA compliant. You have to pay
Absolutely.
extra.
Yeah, and I'm using you know, I'm talking about that. I'm in my capacity as a member of my union. We've been having a lot of conversations about some of these technologies aren't particularly safe and to use with kids, and there's just a lot of issues when you start talking about two-way communication over the internet into
Yeah, if
people's
you even
homes.
have internet, can't demand that all the kids have internet before this.
Right. Well, and not only that, but like, are they going? That's crazy. As we're talking, my the like what's it called? The like interface or the app that the that I use with my therapist like popped up. That was really weird.
I saw the reflection of your glasses light up bright, so I was like,
Yeah,
whoa.
that was really strange. coincidence. Anyway, there's just a lot of issues. So I was wondering if she's had like a big drop off in people, or if most of her regular clients are still taking advantage of therapy.
Yeah, she's been pretty lucky. She had one or two people drop off that she thought were close to ready to end anyway, but had her way. She's seeing the same number of people, but she does have other therapists working for her that have not been as lucky. She's also a member of a network of practice owners, so she is she's hearing about a lot of people having drop off. There's also many different types of specialty therapy that don't work as well, or at least some people don't feel they work as well.
Right.
Jody practices EMDR, which would not really be feasible if there weren't a couple of apps that are out there right now that can actually, do the light bar and the sound. I mean,
what does that stand for? I'm ignorant. What is it?
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. It's eye movement desensitization and response.
Okay.
So, it's a trauma therapy generally, and it has lights moving across, so it gets your eyes. They have to go all the way across from one end to the other, and sounds as well, and there are cycles of it, and it can help dig out a lot of what's there that you wouldn't be able to talk about normally. So
really?
It can get very intense for people. It's very immersive.
So it's almost like a form of hypnosis.
I guess there's some similarities to hypnosis, but you are fully lucid and in control, and the practitioner is not.
Okay.
So it is still general. You're doing what they call talk therapy, but with this aid to try and dig out some stuff and create. It's almost. I mean, I'm going to sound pretty ignorant if I start explaining it too much, but they say that recalling something, if you're in the same situation as you were before, is better. So you tie certain things to other words are escaping me, but
I'll have to bring Jody on,
right?
on the show.
So it adds certain stimuli, and then that can maybe dig out certain responses.
All right. Well, I'll try to schedule a chat with her so I can learn more about it.
Yeah.
Have you done it before?
No, it would be pretty dangerous for me to do it with her. And then, yeah, I don't feel that I would be a good candidate for it. I don't really have that intense trauma background that I know about, at least. So there's a lot of PTSD that this helps sort through. But it can also be very intense for those patients. So it's important that a practitioner is watching, which is difficult to do while the app's on the screen and you're trying to watch through a video camera. Right. So it has been a lot more careful for her. Her business partner specializes in a couple things, but one of them is psychodrama. And psychodrama is you're physically acting things out in empty chairs, and it's very difficult to do, especially in groups.
Yeah.
The fact that she's on maternity leave, other than doing the sessions with the baby on her lap right now, sort of irons that out. But it'll be difficult to see how things will pan out with the psychodrama stuff. But Brittany is she's a worker. She will figure out all sorts of stuff to do. I'm not worried about that.
For sure. So I'm going to move on to a different subject, which seems to be taking the internet by storm these days, which is about 5G and something that you know about, because correct me if I'm wrong, but you, the company you work for, sells antennas for telecom, so you're familiar with the technology that we use to wirelessly communicate with people, right?
Yes, and actually, just to add on to that, we had two divisions of the company, and they sort of put them together under salespeople. So as of January of last year, it's also test and measurement equipment.
Okay.
So it's called the scanning receiver. All the networks need them to test the various types of networks they have. And I have been selling them. So if there's a scanning receiver from PCTEL that goes to Canada, that's my sale, that's my deal. So I've had to learn a lot about 5G.
Yeah, so what I'm seeing on the internet right now is basically, and I love kind of watching internet conspiracy theories. That's a fun pastime
Yes.
of mine. So, and I have no shortage of friends, virtual friends who like to actively partake in conspiratorial thinking. So it's fun to watch. But as far as I can tell, there are two different conspiracy theories currently as it relates to 5G and the pandemic. And the first one is that 5G is actually what's causing people to be sick. The implementation of 5G is making people sick, and that it's not really communicable virus, but it's actually some sort of waves. And then the other conspiracy theory that I've seen regarding 5G is that the the pandemic isn't as bad as they're making it out to be, and that it's just a cover for the installation of 5G networks all over the place. And this would be something that could be easily laughed off if it weren't for the fact that I've seen articles in the last couple of days where people are actually lighting 5G towers on fire in different parts of the world. And there's absolutely a
Do they even know
cohort of people.
5G towers?
What?
Do they
Well,
know?
what they think are 5G antennas
Yeah.
or towers that they are burning, which is, you know, when you're supposed to be social distancing and you're out there lighting antennas on fire and stuff, seems kind of risky on a lot of levels. But I guess that's what I've seen. I don't know if you've seen other, and I've seen stuff about 5G for a long time, about how, you know, people talking. Most of the people I see talking about it generally don't seem to understand the technology that they're talking about. At the same time, I am not throwing out, I don't understand it at all. So I'm not throwing out at totally the possibility that there could be some kind of harmful effects from this, but I don't think that it's at the level that people are saying, because it doesn't really make sense, because it would affect 100% of the people. So I don't think the
Right.
people who are pushing this want to destroy their own brains and bodies to implement it. But I guess all of that is to say, since you know quite a bit about this subject, how can you enlighten the people who may or may not, who may tune into this, about what 5G is, how it differs from what we've had before, and why we should or should not be concerned for our health and safety?
So I will start. Oh God, where to start? Okay, I guess I'll just start with what it is and what is different about 5G in a way that would relate to electromagnetic waves, right? The fact is, these are everywhere, right? If not, your phone wouldn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And if people are looking at having cases that shield their bodies from these waves and all this stuff, that can't work, or your phone wouldn't work, right? Like, you'd have to put the phone in a Faraday cage, which is just like a metal box or like a metal grate that's thin enough that the waves couldn't get through, and yeah, your phone just wouldn't radiate at all. I think there's two different pieces to 5G which are very important, and they have divided them into the simplest of terms, FR1 and FR2, which is frequency range 1 and frequency range 2. Frequency range 1 is the same frequencies that we've been dealing with for forever. They are
radio waves and stuff.
Yeah, they're all radio waves. So the frequencies that you deal with, traditional cellular has always been 800 megahertz, 900 megahertz, well, less 900, more 800 megahertz, 1700 to 2700. They're all in there. Wi-Fi's in there at 2.4. So anything that's below 6 gigahertz is in FR1. I can't see a notable difference with how the technology works for 5G, which I do know some of how it works, getting higher speeds to phones, mostly by cutting out, trimming the fat on the individual packets that are coming through. Packets like, think of it like a sweet and low packet or something, right? Flying through the air. And inside each of them is a certain amount of data. Okay. And then written on the package is what it is. It says sweet and low. So now they put less on the outside and more on the inside. Okay. And then there's different technologies with how they are able to decrease the latency. In fact, a funny thing with how 5G works is if we were 5 or so years further down the 5G road, they'd be putting in ventilators remotely because of how low latency this stuff is. So we wouldn't have the doctors fighting for N95 masks on, at least on ventilation cases. They would be able to do that from a remote control booth and just skip from patient to patient.
Wow. Why does it make that available when we can't do that now?
So data speed is important for most users, right? You want no buffering, you want everything to go faster. Fact is, with 5G, at least in the FR2 range, your data speeds will be faster than plugging into an Ethernet cable over the air, which is crazy. That is insane to me.
Yeah. Wow.
But if you slant it the other way, there's a way that you do this where you just have redundant. So you'll have 5 of the exact same sweet and low packets sent, just to make sure that you're always connected. So there's low latency. So that's good for gamers, and that's good for, they call it remote surgery. And it's also good for, they can even beef it up even further with industrial automation, IoT, they call it, IIoT.
So theoretically, like, because one thing I've been working on with another friend of mine is doing, like, while this quarantine is going on, doing a virtual, like, open mic, and with, like, hip hop artists and musicians, and he was talking about having basically, I don't need to explain it all, but like one user on like a live stream would be running like the music, and another user might be sending a vocal, and another user might be doing something else, but there would be like latency that you'd have to like calculate and try to like come to a a balance with it, because every time it passes from one person to another, it's like slightly behind. So my question is, would it eliminate just like all latency, and you would be able to do like live recording and stuff like that from remote locations?
Yes. So you can't remove all latency, but what you can do is make it so fast that it happens. So latency used to happen in previous technologies in microseconds.
Yeah.
It used to happen in milliseconds.
Yeah.
1,000th of a second.
Right.
Now it would happen in increments of microseconds, which is 1 millionth. So just that, those orders of magnitude difference there, it's imperceivable, the latency that exists. So you also get rid of extra packets that they're sending called beacons. Hey, I'm here. Are you here? Oh yeah. Hey, I'm here too. Boom. And then, whether things are asleep or not asleep. But the whole package essentially can, and there's always the trade-off between the data rate and the latency. But with 5G, it has two different modes, one of which is just low latency and one of which is high data speeds. Both are higher data speeds than 4G ever was. And it has to do with modulation and what's dropping and what's not dropping.
Okay.
Because you're going to drop some packets. You're not going to receive all of them. They'll bounce off a building weird. These are waves in space, and you'll miss some, and then it'll be difficult to decode them on the other end, whatever. So you can decrease latency by sending it multiple times, and then it can see, hey, I got all 5. I'm supposed to get 5 packets that are the same. These are them. Bam, bam, bam. The protocols are the same.
Okay.
So that would be much better. Now the difference, that FR1 is going to be slower because the frequency range. So that's how many courses of a wave happen in 1 second is 1 hertz.
Okay.
Which is weird because it ends in Z. It's not plural, 1 hertz. And then, so you're dealing in up to 6 gigahertz at 6 billion periods per second. Now in FR2, you're anywhere from generally 28 to 34. There's some talk of up to 90 gigahertz and all that stuff. That's unlikely to be going out to the public because also the power that is being emitted drops so quickly in free space when there's that amount of waves. And if it hits a freaking tree leaf, it's dead. So the way that FR2 would work, it'll be so much higher data speeds because you're taking a point off of each of one of these waves, and now there's 30 billion of them.
Okay.
Also, there's nothing else up there. There's nothing competing. So you have these huge channels of, 80 megahertz or, 15 megahertz, whatever. Those are huge channels. You used to have cellular companies fighting over 1/10 of 1 megahertz. And that's, so that would be extremely fast. The problem, of course, is that, if you're broadcasting from a tower, that's where they're going to have high power. But what most of these conspiracy theorists are looking at is this FR2, because that's what's different.
Mm-hmm.
Those won't be on towers, likely. Maybe you'll have 4, one on each of the feet of the tower, very low, to cover the last mile or whatever, but they'll be in small cells because it's not going to go very far. You'll only need it in the densest of environments. So if I'm in downtown Chicago, I might see some, but where I live, even though I'm still in Chicago, they don't need that. We're not going to see a lot of FR2 out here.
So what are people worried about with that high power is going to be similar to like how people don't want to live by like power lines and power generators and stuff like that?
Well, see, that's what people get confused with frequency and with power.
Okay.
But it's not high power. It's
Right.
really low power.
Okay.
And also, you got to look at what your body absorbs versus what your body will reflect. I think we know from our microwave ovens that 2.4 gigahertz, which it's putting out, is what water absorbs. It's what we absorb.
Uh-huh.
So we sit here right next to a Wi-Fi router, putting out 10 to 20 times the power that your phone's putting out, like right at their faces all day, like, and not worried about it. And now you're talking about these different frequencies, and they're talking about, I guess there's some military weapon that uses certain frequencies within this range to cause nausea. But again, that would have to be such high power. So a microwave oven is putting out, 1,000, 3,000 watts. Your phone is putting out 10 milliwatts or less, right? And then these towers are putting out more, but also the free space loss is very, very real. So like if you wanted to not have any radiation from your phone enter your body, the simplest thing to do would be to move it any distance away from actually touching your ear.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not, it loses so much. I could show you the calculations for that, but that would be super boring. As if this is the fucking Super Bowl I'm talking about here. But
Yeah.
so to me, the free space loss, the fact that I saw these conspiracy theories. Of course, we didn't have COVID-19 at the time, but I saw these when 4G came out.
Yeah.
And the difference is I know more about 5G because I've been on the test and measurement site. And the bad news for the conspiracy theorists is here in the US and lots of places, that 5G's up. It's running. You can't stop it.
Yeah.
It's too late. But I see people talking about, oh, there's 5G here, there's 5G there. That I was looking at it's where they plan to put 5G. There's lots of places that don't have anything.
Yeah.
In fact, in Canada, they're not even looking at doing the auction for 5G FR2. They did FR1, but that still won't be up for a while. They won't do FR2 until 2021, mid 2021. And talking to Rogers Communication, they're like, yeah, right. I'll believe that when I see it. I'm looking at 2022. Like that's for the auction.
Yeah. So what are people worried that it's gonna do to that? Like it's gonna cause cancer, or what are they? Because I'm not clear on that.
I read some of these articles. They're not clear on it either. They just say it's bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I see lots of. There's one source that I keep seeing talking about different things. One was talking about smart metering before, how it puts out bad radiation, all of that. Though it's extremely low power and at 900 megahertz, which is unlicensed. Like I could just build that, and I could put out 900 megahertz under a certain power level right here in my house, no problem. I mean, your cordless phone was 900 megahertz or 2.4 gigahertz. Those are both unlicensed bands, which is why Wi-Fi is there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I see 5G articles. I saw LTE articles, and it's all this guy.com, and it's all super vague. And they're like, this is written by this guy who's a master of crystals. And I was like, whoa, I don't know if that really correlates to who should be talking about 5G. Like if you want someone to write this article, say something, and then have someone whose name starts with doctor. But a little, like that's, I just want to see either a medical expert or an RF expert at the doctorate level explain exactly what this would do, and I haven't seen that anywhere. So until I do, I would consider this hooey. And also, there's nothing anyone can do about it, and they have no idea what towers are 5G and what.
Right.
Cartoons, they use what's called street furniture because the city already owns it. It'll be on a friggin' street light. You won't know that it's a. I mean, I know because I'm like, oh, that's our antenna because I'm a big nerd, but nobody else is gonna know that stuff.
Right. So you're saying that people should probably just start lighting all the streetlights on fire.
Yes. Yeah, that's probably good. Yeah.
All right, good. That's
if they want,
that's
if you want mass chaos.
Yeah, it's a good way to wrap up that discussion.
Yeah. Light the lights on fire.
But so I shouldn't worry. I should just go to sleep with my phone taped to my head, and I'll be straight.
Look, put a layer of tube tape between your head and the phone, and then you're totally straight. Yeah, I'd say that you shouldn't worry unless you want to worry about something you can't do anything about anyway.
Right.
So, hey, there could be stuff. I think the one valid point in all this is that they don't have tests of 20 years of radiation exposure, which you never will have. But to say that this was developed by military people in the U.S., and I've seen a lot of that, like for dollars for the U.S. thing. Yes, a lot of carriers are going to make this, but I remember 10 years ago, South Korea claiming we will have 5G by 2020 without even knowing what it was. So I'd say South Korea probably was on the forefront of that, because guess what? They had it by the end of 2018 and up and running by the beginning of 2020 here.
Yeah, and they've controlled their COVID-19 outbreak pretty well. So maybe that.
Yes. Let's just worry about getting people tested and killing this virus, and then we can go back to worrying about whatever else is going on.
Yeah. So a lot of people, myself included, have been thinking about how this may change the world. And I know you and I, we go back a long way, and we share a lot of views about what is wrong with society and what is unfair about society and what could make it better for people. We might have some different, views on how to get there, but my question that I think I'm going to end a lot of these discussions with on this show is just, and I don't know how much time you've had to think, because you've still been working this whole time, and you've got a almost 1-year-old at home, so you've got a lot, going on. Some people have been basically just sitting at home without much to do. But if you have thought about it, I'm looking at this as perhaps the biggest turning point since maybe World War II in the world, in terms of the impact it's having and is going to have. And to me, that there's some good with that, because something had to give. There's been just sort of this gridlock in our politics, and this sort of things suck, but we can't do anything about it, and this sort of everybody just kind of struggling as much as they can to just get by, that it's hard to even have time to sit around and think about it. And that's one of the things, there's a lot of other conspiracy theorists that are saying, oh, this whole thing is just to like control us. And I'm like, no, they already controlled us before. Like this is not what they want. They do not want us sitting around and talking about what matters in our lives and what's
I mean, there's so much. Oh man.
Yeah.
This is I've actually thought about this quite a bit. So this is a great question.
Good. Yeah. So I'm wondering, just what do you hope? Well, what do you think will change, maybe, and also like, what do you hope this uncovers or makes into positive change?
Well, I think the biggest thing that we've already seen change is we've seen the most hardcore conservative capitalists default straight back to as much socialism as they can get quickly. And then realizing that everything that they've done wrong has been in fighting. I mean, I'm not sure how many of them have realized, but certainly some, in fighting for this unfettered capitalism. Man, that's, and then to see, people who will be unswayed by any sort of knowledge, whether it hits them in the face or not, talk about, oh, if you cash this check, he's your president. I was like, that's, first of all, it's not coming out of his account. I don't think there's money in his account. He's fought tooth and nail to make sure that he gets money personally from the stimulus package. As much, McConnell tried to push everything into the top again, and I think everyone is realizing the dollars only flow from middle to lower income up, and they never flow down.
Yeah.
And so it's just been very apparent. You could try and bail out these businesses that were not prepared. I mean, a lot of people don't feel bad for the airlines. I at least get that, hey, if you have the largest overhead business that there is, and then you can't make any money, and in fact are mandated to put planes in the sky burning fuel at twice the, 80 times the rate of what you're making on this flight, you're going to need some amount of money. Okay, I get that.
I feel like they should have put all the money that they charge us for our bags in an account, though, and been for that for a long time.
Yeah, they should have been ready for it, I suppose.
Yeah.
But then you have a company like Boeing, who's not only the largest supplier of airplanes, but also a major defense contractor to the U.S. that was in a huge battle to not go bankrupt before any of this happened.
Right.
And now is having this happen.
Which I don't quite understand either, because they basically just get like blank checks from the government all the time. So I don't quite know how a company like Boeing, and I'm not an expert on that, but uh, and
I
I know we're not just constantly ordering new fighter jets and stuff either, but you know, it does seem kind of hard to understand that one.
Yeah, the only thing I can really tell you is that what Boeing does is all extremely expensive. Every
Yeah.
little bit of what they do is crazy expensive. And they were making a ton of money on it for a long time. And should they have saved better? Yeah, probably. That's what they keep telling us to do if anything goes wrong.
Right.
Uh,
Well,
but I
that's
think,
the whole thing, I think, is in terms of what you're talking about, is people are seeing that. Like, hold up, why do these, you know, I'm sitting here making whatever I make per hour, and you're telling me I should have 3 months salary just stashed away, and yet as soon as capitalism gets disrupted for like a week, then these corporations are just like standing there with their hands out, and it's like, well, they've got billions and billions of dollars flowing through them. Why can't they have some funds for the event that we know is going to happen one day? You know,
yeah.
this isn't
Well,
like unthinkable.
no, it's happened here before. Right? It's just like it wasn't as a global level because we weren't at a global level as much in the middle of World War One.
Right.
But um, yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that people need to realize on the other side of the aisle, for me at least, is you can't you can't pull every lever for the corporations early because you have nothing left when a real thing. I mean, Trump was like, "Oh, we can cut the payroll tax, I guess." I don't know. I mean, how many corporations were paying even $1 in tax? They had nothing left
Right.
to help these companies out again. And most of them, including most of these companies had been buying back their own stock, which means taking their dollars to enrich the shareholders because the shareholders control everything. And just being in publicly traded company, it's a quarterly world. Like
Yeah.
everything happens, and even if you're like, it doesn't matter what happens on March. I mean, I have a year to get this. There's so much pressure and stress, and we lose so much money. We must spend almost our entire profit margin on I guess we would have double the profit margin if we weren't a publicly traded company because we have to spend all this money on auditors and all this stuff and reporting, and it wouldn't make a damn bit of difference if we were private. So it's all this excess pressure, and that's going
Yeah.
to have to come down a little bit. We're going to have to start taxing these corporations higher. You're going to have to start injecting money lower on the chain. I
Well, I
mean, the
think,
whole theory of wealth is that there are people who were built to be wealthy, and if they say if they switched it all, it would be at worst 80-20 that would go right back into the hands and come out of the other people's hands. That's what they say.
well,
So
I
why
think
are they worried about it?
I think the other thing that people are seeing is how the stock market, and a lot of people know this anyway, but like it's really clear right now that the stock market is not an indication of the health of an economy because,
Absolutely. Oh my
you know,
God. Thank you
the
so much.
the the day that like jobless claims was like the highest at any point ever or something, the stock market was like shooting back up because of
Right.
all these different factors that have nothing to do with whether people are working or making money or you know, it's all just speculation on what might happen in the future. And you know, right as this stuff was all happening, the Saudi Arabian government just decided we're gonna flood the marketplace with oil and shoot the price down. Um,
Well, it
and
was the Saudis and the Russians were in their own
right,
little pissing match. And
right,
guess what? They both lost.
right,
Hugely.
right. But it's like any little thing like that can disrupt the whole house of cards because it's just all. I heard like an economist describing it as like a game of Jenga, and how it's like this wobbly system that they keep propping up with things that aren't real, and as soon as like one major piece gets pulled out, the whole thing collapses. And I think hopefully, I don't know, my going thing with like people who are sort of indoctrinated is there's only so long that you can't believe your own eyes. And
Right. Perfectly
when
said. Yeah.
when you start seeing, well, and I think we talked about this previously, but in another conversation, the a lot of things about Donald Trump and the current administration that drive people like you and me crazy don't matter in the way that they don't necessarily affect the average American citizen's like life on a day-to-day basis. Like, I'm appalled by children in cages separated from their parents and stuff like that. But life goes on for the average American citizen. They don't have to see it. They don't have to.
In a report on that front, as far
Yeah,
as
they're not talking about it in the news very much, but I'm on like some email lists and stuff about immigration justice, and there's definite fear about outbreaks in these camps. And
the first thing I thought of, I was like, oh my God, they have to be.
yeah, and they're just deporting people still. They're the ICE people have masks, and they're it's like, why are you prioritizing this at all right now?
And they're shooting fish in a barrel because people can't leave their damn house.
Right, exactly. So they're just raiding houses, and
I mean, that's nuts.
right. But my point is that stuff is crazy to us, and appalling, in the way that he talks and the way that he behaves. But really, the only big thing that he's done was a tax bill before this, right? And so that had a generally short-term positive impact for most people. They thought, they saw a better tax return or whatever, and they don't maybe realize that these cuts are going to expire for the average person, in a few years, and then it's going to look even worse. And that's kind of how they play those games. But when you start having friends and relatives dying from a mishandled public health crisis,
yeah,
that can change people's views pretty quickly and make them think a little bit differently about how competent the people are. And obviously some people will not change no matter what they see, but I think it gets hard to spin your way out of things like that.
I've seen articles to that point as well, like everything that he does to do his 4Ds, which aren't dive, dip, duck, dodge, and dive, or whatever, but they're basically the same thing. They don't work now because you can't dodge this. You can't deny this. I'm sure that was one of them. People are dying, and everyone can see it. And then the one thing that you've been saying is that the economy is good because the stock market is good, which was false in the first place. But that's not good anymore.
Right.
And your whole thing fell apart in a week. 1 week, the whole thing fell apart. You had no more defense for it. And then you've got this whole thing, you're going to put up garbage legislation, then try and like blame the Democrats for not signing on to a blank check for all the corporations while non-corporate America pays for it. It's like there's not even money for that from non-corporate America. I mean,
right.
What was it, 6.8 million people filed for unemployment in 1 week? That's crazy. That's insane.
Yeah, it's not, and I think it's also waking people up to the how fake all the arguments are against some of the social programs that people want. Like, whenever we talk about Medicare for all or giving people universal health care, it's like, well, how are you going to pay for it? And then a week after this thing hits, they're just like, oh, here's $2 trillion.
Like, oh, we have that money already.
For you to get a check in the mail. and
Eventually, not when you need it, which is right now.
and to like triple unemployment benefits in some places. You know, like in Michigan, the full benefit's like $360 or something a week, and they're giving you $600 on top of that.
Right,
You just do that. Like, here you go. Here's months worth of, your salary out of nothing. So I think those ideas, and I mean, that should be clear and should have been clear for a long time, because whenever there's a war, we have money. It's never really true, but I think when things like this happen, you can see through it a lot quicker, and it's the stories
that weren't looking for it see it.
Right. Well, stay well, and hopefully we can hang out this summer if this all dissipates. And
I'm hoping that I get to lick your face before the end of the summer here. I want that to be okay by then.
Yeah, definitely. There's got to be a lot of swapping of bodily fluids happening soon. All right. Well, Eric Singer, thank you for being the first guest. This was basically just like us talking, which was fun. And I want to see Levi when he's awake sometime soon.
Yeah, I guess before I go, I can show you at least the Nest Cam, his current state.
Oh, wow.
Hopefully asleep.
You're getting him comfortable with this surveillance state early.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. That's good. That's how my kids used to sleep.
He sleeps every which way. He actually is crawling now, which was a weird thing, but
it was weird.
Yeah, he took forever to even attempt to crawl, and then bam, he's crawling at 11 and a half months or whatever. Now he's all over the place. But as he was learning, there was like a couple days in there, and he would fall asleep like up in like the crawling position, but with his head down like this. All right, I can leave on that note. I know this is getting to be like my mother-in-law saying goodbye here.
All right, man. I'll talk to you.
All right, see you later.
Saturday night in the deep sounds. They bang hip-hop, gridlocked in Greektown. The beat cops looking for somebody to beat down. They got no control. Who's running the streets now? They shutting all